sugar baby.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the DIY Sugar Baby podcast, or at least an adapted version of it. There is a chance that the name of this will change as we go along. This content is kind of going to be a compilation of resources, story time, and personal commentary on a variety of subject matters because, as anyone knows who follows my content, I am all across the board with caffeine, glitter, spite, and religious drama. We cover everything from sex worker rights not rescue, to consent education, to deconstruction of religion, and of course cosplay and makeup, kink. We cover a lot. We cover a lot here. I am bringing this back as more of an adapted vodcast, and as I tell people, if you really want to chat with me, talk with me, or hang out with me, the best place to do so is in live streams. I have many people who try to hit me up with questions in DMs. However, content creator life never ceases, and sometimes I don't see direct messages for a very long time, so I generally direct people to, let's say my Twitch stream, which, if you are seeing the podcast version of this, is playing in the background right now. This would be when we played through the newish game, which is Stray. And yes, I definitely cried. For those of you who know the plot of this game, I bawled. I absolutely bawled my face off. This game was pure emotional damage on every level. I was destroyed when I finished this. 10 out of 10. Absolutely recommend. However, sometimes you can also catch me live on Discord. We have a number of events that happen over there. I'll be doing a Tarot Tuesday later this evening, in fact, and sometimes I go live on Instagram to do makeup. Very rarely I go live on TikTok. I think it's actually been a number of months now since I've been live there. TikTok scares me. TikTok scares me too much to go live over there. It's just such a weaponizable platform. You just get too many false reports that the app takes seriously. I will just go live with colored contacts and get false reports. You would not believe the number of times someone popped in and is like, Satan worshiper, devil believer. I'm literally just wearing colored film over my eyeballs. Calm down. Even worse, of course, if you are in any kind of goth or alt aesthetic, but it is what it is. I generally am live much more often over on Twitch. That's at least several times a week. I was down for most of August. That was brutal. I did not enjoy that experience whatsoever. It was a necessary break for my health, physical and mental, but yours truly has starvation anxiety, and oof, it is not easy. It is not easy to be forced to take a break, even if it's necessary, because your brain is just primed for, we can't stop, we can't ever stop. No, everything's gonna just crumble if we're not moving constantly and taking care of everything, which of course turned out not to be the case. We're now coming back to our normal content posting across TikTok, through Insta, to streaming, and everything that we were doing in between with the House of Quartz content. However, I did promise over on Instagram to deliver a little bit of a storytime / commentary on my thoughts regarding childhood cognitive development, religious trauma, and evangelical end times conservative Christianity. That's a lot. It's a lot of heavy subject matter, and disclaimer, I am not a licensed or registered therapist. As many times as I say that, I still get people hitting me up in DMs like, could you be my counselor? And I'm like, where's your survival instinct? Nowhere do I have licensing. Also, you can't hit up therapists on social media. There is an intake process for stuff like that. Please seek out mental health support from licensed, registered professionals. There are so many scam artists there, people peddling manipulative wellness, and please be careful out there, including taking what I have to say with a grain of salt. What you're hearing is personal commentary quoted resources and my own education and experience. And I'm really just sharing that because I believe that sharing perspectives is important. I believe that stories are important. And I'm really just sharing stuff that might be helpful for other people who've experienced what I've experienced, are leaving their own church communities, maybe their fellow sex workers, that sort of thing, or you're just in another group that I'm a part of, such as the cosplayers. You see, while I was laid out flat on my ass for several weeks, I picked up one of the books that's been lying around staring me down, and out of guilt I finally opened it up. It is a really great read so far. This is Counseling Insights by edited by Vicki Enns, and it kind of goes over the strategies you might use with a client that you're counseling that are more effective than others. So far, I'm only in the first chapter because, man, I got taken out. I was just light sensitive, dizzy, nauseous. It was not a great time. But this very first chapter hit me just smack right upside the back of the head because it starts out with developmental trauma. And the university classes that I was taking in childhood cognitive development were actually quite crucial to my deconstruction from Christianity overall. I actually could not look at Christian theology, and very specifically sin and salvation theology, the same way ever again. And for a very long time, and still to this day, I am somewhat horrified at the potential that sin theology has to cause damage to a child's development. Now, the deconstruction process I've experienced, at least personally, like myself, this very similarly to grieving processes. And of course, grief has been an element of deconstructing from the church community that raised me. I grew up in the Seventh-day Adventist church, which I've just come to understand to be kind of like a very cheerful doomsday culture for legal reasons. And a great deal of my experience leaving that organization, well, it was grief and a lot of anger as well, because as you find yourself interacting with the real world, I was raised to be in the world, not of it. And so when I actually got to start participating in the world and being part of the world and in it, there was a lot of grief to process because it seemed that there were a lot of developmental delays that I had to overcome. It turned out that there are many areas of life in communication and relationships and even just environmental awareness that I was missing. Now, my sense of feeling personally attacked by this book came with the discussion of trauma itself. And in this book, it reads, "The word trauma usually evokes images of threatening or devastating events, such as near-death accidents, assaults, wars, or natural disasters. More common and sometimes overlooked are the experiences that involve persistent doses of fear and helplessness within the daily relationships or environments of a person's life." Now, that whole thing about persistent doses of fear and helplessness, that very much summarizes my entire childhood. And when I was taking classes in healthy childhood cognitive development, there was a very strong emphasis on how necessary it is for a child to grow up feeling safe and protected. And the irony of growing up in the Adventist church is the Adventist church pushes their health message. They are all about, if you live this way, you will just be happy, healthy, and secure, including your mental health kind of thing. Like, it's very much sold as salvation is not tied to your health. It's going to be like you're going to know that you're saved because you're healthy, which that message is not great for those in the with a disability whatsoever. Like, you can imagine how damaging that message is. But this church very much sells itself as something that pushes a health message. And most people look at that and they go, well, that doesn't seem so bad. That seems like a really good thing. Well, the irony of that is every waking minute of every day, and then of course at night, because I used to dream constantly about it, the emphasis of my entire life was that Jesus was going to return soon. Now, in adulthood, I can understand how somebody might find that comforting, that someone might consider Jesus' second coming to be a relief, but when you are a kid, that's not really the case. I did not want the world to end, and at the time I had not really experienced anything where I would understand why somebody would not want to be on this planet anymore. So my whole understanding of the world was you can't get attached to anything because you're going to lose it. And I used to be so distressed every time I fell in love with something. If I enjoyed an experience, if I loved a book or a movie, I would have to sit alone for several hours and process that Jesus was coming and Jesus was going to take away this thing that I loved. And I would have to sit there and convince myself that it would be worth the loss, because all of the adults around me were telling me that heaven would be better than anything I'd already experienced. But when you're a kid, you don't have the neurological framework for that. And that is something I think a lot of adult Christians forget when they're interacting with kids, is that we didn't understand their stress. Children do not understand an adult's desire for Jesus to return, at least not in that manner. If a child is being very much abused, perhaps there may be like a desire to escape, and Jesus' second coming would be understood as a relief. But for like a lot of kids, that's not an exciting thing. That's terrifying. And all you know is this planet and this environment. Unfortunately, what I was raised with was not as gentle as the rapture theology. What I was raised with was revelation-centric theology, where the world was going to end in upheaval. We were going to have to flee to the mountains. We probably would not survive. We were probably going to die in the upheaval that was happening before Jesus returned. So there was something about the seas turning red with blood, or they're turning blood red. There was going to be a plague that pocked your skin and just turned your body nasty. Earthquakes, like there was just like about 7 different plagues we would have to live through. So my parents and my church community were out here just cheerfully every single day. So Jesus is going to come, and we're probably all going to die. This was also predicated with the government is going to take away our right to worship on Saturday. The world's going to get so bad that we are going to become the scapegoats. Adventists have kind of like a main character complex. For any who might be ever listening in on this, like that probably doesn't sound very flattering, but that was something I had to deconstruct for myself, was this idea of like, why on earth would I think that my little, out of the hundreds of religions on this planet, for some reason mine specifically is important enough for the government to hunt down for worshiping on Saturday. When you step outside of it, it feels ridiculous. And I actually had to like deconstruct kind of like a sense of shame of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I actually thought I was that important to the government. But it was more than that. It was also that like the society itself would be whipped up against us, and the Sunday keepers, those who worship on Saturday, would someday come to hunt us all down. And when you take into consideration everything we know about childhood development now and a child's need to feel safe, I was being exposed to every single type of message evangelical Christianity had that said I was not safe and my family was going to be murdered in front of me. Personally, I really struggle with the concept of just like having these people in my life still, the people that raised me, because there is part of me that's just kind of like, how are you this stupid? What on earth kind of cognitive dissonance do you have to think that it is okay for a 5-year-old to be freaking out every single day about their family and themselves being murdered? I had so many nightmares where the sky was basically falling, there's meteors blasting the earth, the world is shaking, Jesus is coming in the distance. And while Jesus is on the way, my brain is dreaming that my parents are being stabbed or shot in front of me. Now, that definition of trauma goes on to say, any traumatic experience is a violation of one's sense of safety, evoking survival responses to eliminate or avoid the threat. There are predictable symptoms that show up when something wakes up the memory of these experiences: high anxiety, troubling memories that disrupt sleep, and a quick temper that flares up unexpectedly. All of which are definitely recognizable symptoms that I've experienced myself. But it lists off a list of things that you might struggle with if you have just grown up in an environment where you did not feel safe, such as chronic or persistent fears and worries, an inability to trust others and develop forms of intimacy, confusion, lack of motivation, sense of futility, struggles with setting and recognizing boundaries, physical struggles such as body aches and pain, and of course general passivity and a struggle to form opinions or make decisions. I can't tell you how many of my Adventist friends and myself really struggled with trying to make a life plan, to decide where we were going to go, because our parents kept telling us essentially there was no point. Jesus was coming soon. Why would you really plan ahead? Because all of your focus went on monitoring the world around you intensely. We were constantly watching the news for signs of the end times, and it was exhausting because everything from a school shooting to a natural disaster, like the whole church lost its shit when Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans. That was definitely considered a sign of the end times. Anytime like legislation alters in any like way that sort of pertains to them, it's happening, the government's coming. It's just hyper awareness because you never really feel safe, and you're just sold this narrative that Jesus is coming, Jesus is on the way, just hold on for Jesus to come and that will fix everything. Which leaves all of us kids, like us, like, I don't know, the 80s, the 90s kids, even down to like 70s, those whose parents were really influenced by TV evangelicalism, or just we got dragged through all of these sermons. We are here in our 20s and 30s struggling, and of course 40s and 50s even, just kind of struggling with these developmental delays and the traumatic effects of growing up not feeling safe and constantly monitoring our activity, our actions, and our thoughts. According to what I was reading, ideally, children receive secure enough caregiving responses that allow them to recover from stress and experience the necessary nurture to reestablish a sense of the world as good and reliable. But if you grow up in evangelical end times Christianity, you never perceive the world as safe, good, or reliable in any capacity. It also goes on to say developmental trauma compromises a person's ability to read themselves or other people accurately, making it harder to enter and maintain supportive relationships. They may develop patterns of shutting down their awareness of fear, allowing them to survive by believing they don't need support. Cough, cough, like just at me with the I don't need anybody, I'm independent. And underlying such patterns is usually a deep river of disturbance and disconnection, along with feelings of shame, humiliation, and loss. Once again, out here with, like, I have just never hated myself more and never had such a deep sense of shame about myself than I did when I was like at my most entrenched in the Adventist church. I think around age 17 was when I was the most dedicated and trying my hardest to connect with God through that theology. And I could not stand myself. I was struggling with suicidal ideation constantly because I felt such a deep sense of shame about my own existence. However, while I definitely believe that it is important to acknowledge kind of like everything we've struggled with as we deconstruct, we also kind of like need what's helpful. And while kind of just like I came here to have a good time and I feel so attacked right now, what was very helpful for me, what I kind of just discovered while my body forced me to go to bed, and like I'm one of those people who works so I don't have to think about certain things overly much while resting. What was helpful for me was that this also discussed the three main developmental patterns that are particularly shaped by the legacy of developmental trauma. And those three things are attachment, self-regulation, and self-perspective. What they go over is that what can be really helpful is when you are kind of deconstructing and addressing developmental trauma. And I personally think that end times theology causes or can cause a lot of developmental trauma. What can be very helpful is number one, building a secure relationship foundation, which means developing secure, healthy, and nurturing connections where you are. Number two, creating developmental bridges, which is recovering skills from gaps left in developmental capacities. Number three, developing a positive connection to the body, which is cultivating a sense of safety and stability in one's own body. And that means directly addressing, oh, I'm not sinful. And if I'm not inherently sinful, what is actually going on? And number four, ordering the story across time, creating a cohesive life story that separates the past from the present and the future. And these are all things that if they resonate and you think might be helpful in a similar way that they have been helpful for me, that would be something to discuss, of course, with a counselor or a licensed therapist if that option is available to you. I think it is very important to know that these resources and information is out there, which is kind of why I'm discussing it. However, your own healing process is not something that I can take charge of for somebody else. That would probably cross a lot of ethical boundaries for sure. But I think overall it is very important to at least affirm that growing up in fear of oneself through sin, fear of the world is sinful. I will affirm that if you are experiencing some of what I have talked about here, like you're just kind of relating to some of what I have talked about in this short episode, I really just want to affirm that it is worth looking into and pursuing, possibly talking to someone, healing those things, questioning some of it. And at least on my own side, I found that delving into the research in regards to childhood cognitive development does kind of give a lot of context to the emotional distress I experienced as a child into adulthood that I was informed I shouldn't have if I had a relationship with God in the context of that church, right? And if that is the case, I wish you the absolute best of luck. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. You are so very much appreciated, and as always, your worth is not your productivity. I say that every single time I think I stream or I do content like this, because that is a very important message for a lot of people, and especially those of us with the religious trauma. I'm also going to say thank you to the more recent House of Quartz Patreon subscribers, including Jacinto A, Lazy Gothy, Phrygian, I hope I'm saying that correctly, and Diaper Diva. Thank you so much for supporting my content You are so appreciated. If you have questions regarding kind of just some of the content you've seen of mine here or on TikTok, that sort of thing that you would just really love to hear me talk more about, well, drop a comment down below. And of course, liking, commenting, sharing, that sort of thing, that is also very much appreciated. That helps boost content, boost visibility. As I'm always saying, visibility is survival, not just for content creators, but the spicy people as well. And even if you don't subscribe to their content, monetarily support them, going out of your way to interact with content, share it, refer it, that sort of thing, always just it helps us out a million times over. So thank you for that extra effort if you do so. Of course, feel free to pop into the House of Quartz Discord to say a hello and hang out with an absolutely fantastic community of cosplayers, kinksters, and people who just thrive off of glitter and spite. Or of course, you can come join us over on Twitch, where we are currently playing Cult of the Lamb, building our own little air quotes cult. So you can come over and join our own little thing that we have going on, which is the Church of Goth Chicks and Fishnets. I'm going to give a special shout out to a Twitch follower, Derigo, who somehow is almost always the first in the chat, dropping hype and emotes, and is always doing very thoughtful actions such as gifting subs to new followers and people coming in to check out the chat, welcoming, interacting, and also clipping content and whatnot, just going above and beyond to support my content, and that is very much appreciated. And a big thank you to the top gifter of the past 2 months, actually, which would be Ludog. Thank you so very much. So thank you all so very much, and we will see you all again next time. Hope you have a great rest of your week.